Back in late May 2016, I mustered up the courage to ask out my longtime crush, Kate. We decided to grab some coffee, and it turned into a series of 3 awesome dates. Eventually, we made it official and became a couple. Over the next 7 months, our relationship felt like a dream come true. We had so much in common and rarely had any disagreements. We were super open with each other, which even extended to our intimate moments. Our bed life was off the charts, plus we both had good jobs so we could spoil each other without worrying about money. To top it off, both of our families were incredibly supportive of our relationship. Then in January 2017, something big happened. I got accepted into my country's Armed Forces Reserve program as a combat engineer. From February to late April, I went through basic training, which turned out to be the toughest thing I'd ever experienced. There were moments when I doubted if I would make it through, but Kate's words of encouragement through texts and calls kept me going. She was right there by my side when I received my BTC certificate, and she always made sure I knew how proud she was of me. As part of my gig in the reserves, I had this gig where I had to bounce for advanced training during the summer. It was no joke running from early June all the way to late August. Kate had my back the whole way. She was totally on board with me heading out 400 kilometers away to the training center, even if it meant sacrificing most of our summer break. She understood how important it was for my military career to level up. Let me tell you, that summer was rough. I felt like a total outcast among the different cliques that formed during our course. I was the target of endless jokes and my self-esteem took a serious nosedive. But you know what kept me going? It was Kate's unwavering belief in me. She had faith that I could push through, and that's exactly what I did. Against all odds, I managed to pass as the 5th best on the course, and I owe every bit of that success to her. Our relationship took a turn for the worse once we returned home. According to her, I had lost my spontaneity and outgoing nature compared to before I went away. I became dismissive to harmless jokes as personal insults and preferred staying in, watching movies and seeking closeness rather than going out. Little did we know the summer had left me with some serious social anxiety, and it started taking a toll on our relationship. As we approached our 2-year anniversary in 2018, we got into a heated argument over a minor misunderstanding, which ultimately led to our breakup. I was devastated by the breakup, but then she texted me 3 days later expressing her desire to work things out. We didn't see each other for 3 weeks, but we stayed in constant communication, slowly trying to repair the damage. However, when we officially got back together, something felt off. Every conversation with her felt like walking on eggshells, and it only worsened my anxiety, further damaging our already fragile relationship. Finally, everything came to a head at the end of July. Back when Kate was still in school, she crossed paths with this guy named John. Turns out she saw John what she used to see in me, and they hit it off and became really tight friends. He became her shoulder to lean on during our breakup. And whenever I messed up afterward, just so you know, I was aware of John's existence, but I never thought Kate would ever do anything with him. So one evening after work, we had made plans for me to crash at Kate's place. When I got there, I walked in on the two of them hanging out on the couch in the living room. Kate explained that John had dropped by for a spontaneous visit and he was on his way out. But things changed after John left. She suddenly turned distant and cold. It hit me slowly that our relationship was on life support, and I mustered up the courage to ask her how things were between us. It turns out she felt the same way, and we agreed to call it quits the next day. She did let me stay the night one last time, though, since it was late and she still had some concern for me. From that point on, Kate became unusually attached to her phone, and super protective of it until she fell asleep. In the past, she wouldn't mind if I caught a glimpse of her and her friends texting about whatever, but now she made an effort to hide the screen from me. I confronted her about it, and she brushed it off as private stuff, which only made me more suspicious. Once she dozed off, curiosity got the best of me. I couldn't resist unlocking her phone. I knew her passcode, and what I found shook me to the core. There were hundreds of messages between her and John, talking about how she was single now, how thrilling it was that they could finally be a public couple. And worst of all, they were mocking me for every little thing I did. Turns out, my crying wasn't as discreet as I thought. Kate woke up and caught me in the act. She lost it and threw a fit. I was too stunned and overwhelmed to muster any anger or find the right words to fight back. So I just gathered my belongings and walked out with Kate yelling and shouting at me the whole time. It was the early hours of the morning when I finally made it home. I completely broke down and ugly cried throughout the night. The next day I called in sick to work and spent the entire day wallowing in my bed. The day after that chaotic night, my phone blew up with angry texts from Kate's friends and family. In a desperate attempt to protect her own reputation and discredit anything I might say about her, she went around telling everyone she knew that I had forced myself on her that night. According to her twisted version of events, I supposedly tried to get someone last time before we broke up. And once I got what I wanted, I hightailed it out of there. She painted me as some kind of villain. She claimed that what I did to her was traumatizing, but she convened She saw herself as the bigger person for choosing not to pursue legal action. I spent the following months living in fear, constantly worried that her false accusation would lead to my discharge from the army, and forever tarnish my reputation. Nothing ever came of it. It was all smoke and mirrors. About 5 months later, Kate slid into my DMs. After exchanging some polite words, she essentially apologized for the whole mess, and actually confessed to faking everything. However, she made it clear that she would never admit it publicly because she cared more about protecting her own reputation than my image. I was furious, but I kept my cool. I took screenshots of our conversation as evidence and kept engaging with her. Over the next 3 months, she fell into this predictable cycle of behavior. It went like this. She would complain about her current life situation, usually involving John messing up in their relationship in some way, and would seek my advice. She would start reminiscing about our past relationship, saying how I never messed up like John did, and expressing a desire to go back to the way things were, and so on. Then she would suddenly ignore me because John finally pulled his head out of his, some grand romantic gesture and saved their relationship. Shortly after, she would embark on a smear campaign on social media about our relationship. She would enlist the help of her friends, fully aware that I would see it all, in an attempt to provoke me into an argument. It worked. She would try to twist the argument around and make me out to be the bad guy. Then she would proceed to block me for about a month, only to repeat the whole cycle all over again. This happened 3 times like clockwork, and it always left me feeling completely drained and shattered. Yet, there was a part of me that oddly desired it to occur. Each time it happened, I made sure to capture screenshots of every incriminating thing she said. I ended up with a full SD card filled with all the evidence I'd compiled, and that's when I knew it was time to take action. I made multiple copies of the most awful text messages I had captured. Then I went ahead and bought several manila envelopes. I mailed them out to everyone who I believe mattered to Kate. Her parents, grandparents, close extended family, best friends, her boss at work, coworkers, and even her teachers. I tracked down any mailing address I could find. It was important to me that anyone receiving those envelopes knew that the texts contained conversations between Kate and me. With that in mind, I sealed the envelopes and sent them on their way. In just 3 weeks, I started seeing some results. The same people who had previously messaged me with shameful insults were now reaching out to apologize. One of my favorite apologies came from Kate's own parents. They expressed their sincere regrets about their daughter's behavior, and acknowledged that they had raised her to be better than how she had acted. They pleaded with me not to pursue any legal actions, although I had briefly considered it. I didn't have the financial resources or the emotional strength to engage in a legal battle. I told them I would take their request into consideration and assure them that they would be the first to know along with Kate if I decided to proceed with any legal action. I received some texts from Kate too. She said things like, "How could you betray my trust and you ruined my life? You bastard," instead of replying. I simply read every angry message that came in, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Once the message has stopped, I went ahead and blocked her. I never really got the complete picture of how much my revenge affected her life, but I do know that she ended up dropping out of school and losing her job. I wonder if John was really worth it for her. Second story, I'm a 46-year-old man, married for 22 years, and I have 2 sons aged 2016. My wife is also 46. And besides the usual issues that come with marriage, there hasn't been anything out of the ordinary. However, this year, I started noticing some changes in her behavior. For instance, she went back on the pill in March after being off it for a few years. She claimed it was to help with menopause symptoms, although I hadn't really seen any signs of that. She's also been buying nicer underwear, but I recently got a new job with a higher income, so I thought it could be related to that. Additionally, she's been going out unexpectedly without much explanation. Individually, these things may not be too concerning, but when you look at them together, it definitely piqued my interest, to say the least. Anyway, I had noticed something was off, but nothing strange happened until about 2 weeks ago. My wife came home and asked to talk to me, which seemed unusual and made me a bit worried. I asked her what was going on, and she said, I want to go to XX concert, and I have the chance now. I've replied, "That's amazing. You've always wanted to see X, go ahead. Who are you going with?" That's when she dropped the bombshell. She was going with a male friend she had known for years. He had originally planned to go with his daughter, but she couldn't make it. My wife looked guilty as she told me this, but I tried to play it cool and said, "Have a great time." Deep down though, I hoped I could find out more before the concert. They went to the concert, had a good time, and posted a few pictures on social media. Nothing too unusual. I managed to find out the guy's name and did some investigating. But honestly, I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out what was going on. The idiots had been going out for runs together for 6 weeks, taking the same routes at the same times. Although it wasn't directly connected as I mentioned, it didn't take a genius to figure it out. To make matters worse, this a-hole, let's call him Gary, had a public Facebook profile. And it was clear that he was mocking me on there. It wasn't just me being sensitive. It was obvious that this smug prick thought he was smarter and better than everyone else. So armed with that knowledge, I took some time to think. Typically, my plans changed immediately because later that same afternoon, an opportunity to check my wife's phone fell into my lap. I had never done that before in our entire relationship. And sure enough, I found 6 months worth of explicit messages, videos, the whole damn thing between her and Gary. I'm usually a chill guy and rarely lose my cool, and that was true in this situation too. I was in shock, overwhelmed with grief, and simply couldn't believe what was happening. It was Wednesday when I found out. We kept talking until Friday, but she showed no remorse and kept saying that she had feelings for him. That was it for me. Not only did she cheat on me, but she didn't seem to care much about it. So we started discussing a split. It's been tough because we had to wait a few weeks due to one of our sons going through an important educational period. I didn't want to disrupt that. So we had to pretend everything was okay until June 22nd. We're still playing that game, and let me tell you, it's been a total nightmare for me at least. There's a bit more to the story. On the following Friday, I was out for a walk and happened to pass by his house. Without thinking too much, I knocked on his door and got into a fight with him. It was completely out of character for me, as I've never been offensive with anyone my adult life. It wasn't planned, but looking back, I do wonder why I ended up at his place. We didn't involve the police because I threatened to publicly share all the messages I had saved on social media if he called them. Honestly, I wouldn't have followed through with that threat because of my sons, but it worked, and nothing more happened. Now here we are, one whole week later, and to the outside world, we appear to be a normal couple. But inside, I'm feeling a mix of anger and frustration, and I've started making plans to end our long-term marriage. Basically, once we break the news to our boys, she'll move out. I've never been through anything like this before, and I hope I never have to again. Honestly, I'm lost and don't know what to do from one minute to the next. There's a part of me that wants to get back at him and make him suffer, but I've calmed down since I confronted him. I realize it's not a smart idea, but I'll be honest. He felt really good to give him a beating. So that's where I stand. I know every explicit detail of the affair because the moron kept the entire message thread. So I have all the information about their close moments, preferences, dates, times, and places. I know it all. Third story. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend who is 25 for almost 2 years. Everything seemed fine in our relationship until she dropped the bombshell that she's pregnant. I've always been careful, and she claimed to be on birth control, but I had my doubts. I accompanied her to an appointment hoping it was just a false alarm. Despite the unexpected circumstances, I was actually happy because I've always wanted to start a family. As we progressed through the first trimester, she insisted on moving in together, which I now realize was a red flag I missed. We started making plans for our work situations and preparing the baby's room. She strongly believed that she could both work and be a stay-at-home mom. I attended every prenatal appointment with her, and things still seemed good between us. We've now reached the third trimester, and I've managed to adjust my schedule to continue attending every prenatal appointment. Up until now, I had been present for the entire duration of each appointment. However, during one particular appointment, my girlfriend asked me to wait outside while she spoke to the doctor first. I was really worried that something might be wrong with the baby. And she didn't want me to hear about it. When I finally went in, the checkup was already over and thankfully everything looked fine. But when I expressed my concern about not being there for the whole appointment, my girlfriend dismissed it as if it wasn't a big deal. Which was yet another red flag. We are getting close to the due date, just about 6 weeks away, and I start noticing that my girlfriend is acting secretive with her phone calls and texts. Whenever I ask about it, she claims it's work-related and confidential. This raises my suspicion, so I try to sneak a peek at her phone. I discovered that she's using Snapchat and Kik, which strikes me as odd, but I don't confront her about it. Finally, the baby arrives and I'm filled with overwhelming emotions. The child is absolutely perfect, and everything went smoothly during the birth. However, then comes the moment when they ask me to put my name on the birth certificate. My girlfriend becomes extremely insistent about it, constantly urging me to do it and displaying more anxiety than I've ever seen from her before. This is the red flag that I didn't overlook. I refuse to do it, which leads to an argument between us. She eventually stops pushing the issue, possibly because she realizes how suspicious it appears. We're back home, and she has to attend to the baby who just woke up. I noticed that she set her phone down while going to tend to the baby. I couldn't resist the temptation and decided to take a look. Surprisingly, her phone was still unlocked. I started searching for any texts or calls that might raise suspicion, and there it is. A whole conversation on Kik with some guy. They discussed updates about her appointments and shared pictures of her and the baby. Then I stumble upon something shocking. The place where she mentions that she thinks the baby belongs to him. I confront her about it, and she apologizes. She admits that the baby could be mine or someone else's, but she believes it's mine. I demand a paternity test and then decide to leave. It's been approximately a week since our confrontation. The paternity test result came in yesterday, and it turns out the baby is not mine. She's gone to live with her mother. Now here's the interesting part. It took me a lot of digging considering all I had were usernames of the people she talked to. The father of the baby is actually her boss, a married man with 4 kids in middle and high school. I managed to find his wife on Facebook and shared everything I had, including texts from my girlfriend confessing that the baby is his. I'm heartbroken in so many ways. I know I'm fortunate in some aspects, but I'm deeply hurt. Of all things, I feel bitter, angry, and unable to trust anyone. After that, she keeps trying to reach out to me, but I'm not sure if it's out of love or some other reason. Either way, I refuse to engage in any conversation with her. Now let's talk about the guy who is the real father. I informed his wife about the situation. She didn't respond right away. Later, I found out from my ex that he lost his job. It feels like some justice in this world. He wants nothing to do with my ex and blames her for the mess he's currently in. The guy's wife reached out to me over a week later. She apologized for what I went through. I think she was still in shock. She kicked him out, but I have no idea where he went. Their kids are aware of the situation. Everyone knows about it now. My ex-girlfriend still works at the same place, but she's actively looking for a new job because the news of what happened has spread to everyone. I'm still in shock and heartbroken. This holiday season will be tough and filled with sadness for me. However, I know there's hope and that things will eventually get better. This experience has deeply shaken me, and I'm not sure how long it will take to recover. I'm ready to swear off any relationships for good,